On a cold March morning in 1916, a peaceful American town was shattered by a surprise attack. What happened next launched the U.S. into the first modern military action, a chase across the desert with a cast of characters you wouldn't believe. From the first planes of the U.S. Air Force to legendary Buffalo Soldiers, this is the story of Americans' hunt for the revolutionary icon Pancho Villa in an operation called the U.S. Punitive Expedition of 1916. Before what became to be called the Bandit Wars, Pancho Villa was a hero and a villain of the Mexican Revolution. A skilled horseman and military commander, he was fighting to overthrow the Mexican government. But in March 1916, his fight crossed the U.S. border. On March 9th, Villa led a surprise raid on the small town of Columbus, New Mexico. The attack was swift and brutal. The raid is thought to be a response to the U.S. recognizing a rival government in Mexico, and it was a direct challenge to American power. The raid killed 18 Americans, including soldiers and civilians, and left the town in ruins. The U.S. government, led by Woodrow Wilson, was outraged and had to respond. President Wilson wasted no time. He ordered the U.S. Army to cross the border into Mexico and hunt down Pancho Villa. The mission was called the Pancho Villa Expedition, but it is often known as the Bandit War or the Punitive Expedition of 1916. Leading this mission was a determined General John J. Pershing. You can see his forces in the silent film footage, a mixture of old-fashioned forces and new technology. This was an incredible mix of military might. Pershing had at his command not only regular soldiers, but also two of the most legendary units in American military history. The first was the Buffalo Soldiers, an African-American regiment who were famous for their skill and their bravery. Their participation in this hunt was a crucial part of the Army's effort. We also see the use of the Apache Scouts, Native American trackers whose knowledge of the desert terrain was unmatched. Their skills were essential for following Villa's trail. Here's a little hidden fact. As General Pershing and his men hunted for Pancho Villa, the expedition became a training ground for future leaders. One of the most famous was a young lieutenant named George S. Patton. Serving as Pershing's personal aide, Patton was itching for a fight. In May 1916, he got his chance. While on a mission to acquire corn for the horses, Patton and his men in 3 Dodge touring cars encountered 3 of Villa's men, including a top commander. In a surprise firefight, they killed all 3. After the battle, Patton strapped the bodies to the hood of his cars and successfully drove them back to camp. The incident is considered the first motorized attack in U.S. military history. It made headlines and earned Patton the nickname Bandit Killer. This early taste of combat and his time learning from General Pershing would set the stage for him to become one of the most famous American generals of World War II. As I mentioned before, this expedition was a remarkable mix of the old and the new. While the Buffalo Soldiers and Apache Scouts relied on skills that were centuries old, another unit represented the future of warfare, the 1st Aero Squad. This was the very first time U.S. military aviation was used in a conflict. These archival silent films show the fragile biplanes, small and slow, taking off on their missions. While the planes were not very effective at first due to engine trouble and crashes, their presence marked a new era. At the same time, the Apache Scouts were using their incredible tracking skills to find any hint of Villa's movement in the rugged terrain. It was definitely a fascinating blend of old ways and new technology. While the war was being fought, something even stranger was happening. Pancho Villa was a celebrity, and he had made a deal with the Mutual Film Corporation to film his battles. He would even change his battle plans for the camera. The motion picture, The Life of General Villa, was released, but today it is almost completely lost, with only a few fragments remaining. The film was produced by the famous director D.W. Griffin and featured future famous director Raoul Walsh as the young version of Villa. Pancho Villa's reason for starring in the movie was financial, as he needed funds to help the Mexican Revolution. He received a $25,000 advance and was initially promised 50% of the profits from the film. But Villa only received 20% when all was said and done. Raoul Walsh wrote extensively about the experience in his autobiography, Each Man in His Time, describing Villa's charisma, as well as noting that peasants would knock the teeth out of the corpses with rocks in the wake of firing squads in order to harvest gold fillings, which was captured on film. I have never been able to find the remaining fragments of this film in the archives, but the pictures that you're looking at are stills from the original film. After almost a year of hunting, the U.S. Army never fully captured Pancho Villa. The expedition was eventually called off in 1917 because a bigger war was starting in Europe, World War I. The U.S. was preparing to enter, and the troops were needed elsewhere. Villa retired from military life in 1920 after a government-granted pardon. He was given a large ranch in return for putting down his weapons, but his peace did not last long. In 1923, he was assassinated. while in his car. After his death, something even stranger happened. In 1926, his head was stolen from his grave, and it has never been recovered. Today, his body is honored in Mexico City at the Monument of the Revolution. I was recently in the New Mexico History Museum in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I came across some interesting artifacts about the expedition and Villa. The most interesting was Villa's death mask. His skull missing made this even more interesting, especially since it captured a bullet hole in the head. He is said to have been shot multiple times, including 4 times in the head. During the ambush, he died instantly from the 16 bullets that struck his body and head. Another interesting artifact was this wall clock from the Columbus, New Mexico train station. Notice the bullet that pierced the clock. This bullet hole is from the attack on Columbus, New Mexico. The Bandit Wars and the hunt for Pancho Villa were a critical moment in American history. You could have called it a dress rehearsal for World War I, and it showed the world a new kind of warfare. It remains a fascinating story of courage, technology, and a powerful legend. What did you think of the hunt for Pancho Villa? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden history from the archives. Thank you for joining us today. We invite you to watch all our videos from famous funerals to diving into the archives to find generations of history.